Good evening, everyone. My name is Nara Wilson, and I am the Associate Executive of Production and Development at the South Australian Film Corporation. So before we get started, on behalf of the SAFC, I would like to advise all participants that this session is going to be recorded and the video is going to be made available on our website next week to those who were unable to attend tonight. If anyone here tonight would prefer not to take part in this recording, please feel free to leave this Zoom now. And if you'd like to email me at nara.wilson@safilm.com.au, I would be happy to pass on the video link to you next week. The South Australian Film Corporation acknowledges that we are meeting on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pays respects to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, belief and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. And we also extend that respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations peoples that may be here tonight as well. I welcome you all tonight and thank you for taking the time out of your Thursday evenings to join us here. As you know, the SAFC are delighted to have Vee Pendergrast working with us as the Games Consultant on round 2 of our Games Innovation Program, and she has been an incredible support and assistance to us. Just a quick bio of Vee in case you don't know her. Vee Pendergrast has over 20 years experience working in technology and 8 as a Managing Director of an indie studio in Perth, Western Australia. She has worked on several original titles and a large amount of contact works. In 2019, Vee worked with Screen West to launch their fund for games and interactive works, which became a first for the state. Vee regularly writes for video game industry sites, has been involved in advocacy for the game sector for nearly 10 years, and is a member of MCV Pacific and in Games, Women in Games and Gender Equality lists of influential people for 2017, 2018 and 2019. She holds positions on the advisory boards of the Western Australian IT and INT Alliance and Medical Simulation, VR and Health Promotion Games Outreach Charity, and Wise Realities. So I won't take up any more of your time and I'll hand you over to Vee to speak more about the round 2 of the SAFC's Game Innovation Fund. Thanks, Vee.
Thanks, Nara. I would also like to extend my respects because I'm coming to you tonight from on the lands of the Noongar people of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation in what's now known as Western Australia. I'm going to jump straight in. So just to put this a little bit in context about me. Again, I've been in tech since the early 2000s. I've done 15 of those years in corporate telecommunications, which was about the most fun that you can't have in a job. I've worked for every major telco in Australia, manufacturers and distributors. Ended up co-founding my first studio in 2010 because I wanted to do something else besides work in telco for the rest of my life. I've been around the world with this. I'm sure I've seen Cam at a few things in different countries around the place. Obviously over to GDC, Gamescom in Cologne in Germany a couple of times. I've pitched to basically every known publisher, platform holder. Yeah, I've been around with it. I'm terrible at PowerPoint, which I will make abundantly apparent over the course of this session. So I do apologize if my PowerPoint skills are not up to standard. I do spreadsheets and funding programs. I don't do graphic design. And yeah, I've worked on 4 independent titles. I've been in more commission works than I care to remember. For those who don't know SAFC very well, SAFC is the most experienced screen organisation in Australia with over 40 years experience with film and TV, and delivers screen funding for economic and cultural reasons. So this is the discussion that we're now having, of course, is extending this one out into games. SAFC runs Adelaide Studios based in Glenside, and founded the Games Innovation Fund, which is, I'm going to call GIF tonight, and it's not GIF before anyone corrects me. So this is the second round of that particular fund. what you'll find tonight is that we've actually made some fairly major changes as far as the format of the fund is concerned, and as far as the application process and criteria that we will be judging the applications on. So good thing to have jumped on tonight. Before we dive into the criteria nitty-gritty of it, I think we need to take a step back and actually work out why we're funding games right now. So the GIF commenced in 2019. It's essential that SAFC continue and build upon the program. This is super important because, of course, it's very relevant to where we are at right now as a country, as an industry. Obviously, we're very remote collab friendly, very, very agile, and I think every major studio has moved, and of course every indie studio in the country has moved to exclusively online collaboration if they weren't already in that space. We can actually maintain momentum where other screen industries right now are in trouble. So we actually have a lot to offer. Coupled with the fact that games are actually spiking right now in every given market. I was on a combined Austrade and IGEA hosted call this week. And I mean, the anecdotal figure is that roughly about 21% is the that industry groups worldwide, even groups like the World Health Organization, have completely changed their attitude towards games. But something that I need everyone to think about is how much small teams can completely change their own environments right now and elevate themselves to take on the world. We've all got a litany of small teams that have taken product out from this country and had massive success stories. I think everybody knows Hollow Knight from Adelaide, but then again, we all know Goose Game and Florence, and we've got plenty of different titles that we can list that have come out of Australia from small groups, small teams, and done on small amounts of money. So now we're going to dive more into the kinds of product that we can fund. So we've been really broad in terms of what platforms that we can address. Anything that sits PC, phone, tablet, but all the virtual reality and mixed reality, augmented, all the permutations of that has been accommodated within this fund. There's not anything which is prohibited by platform. We can do serious games. What I would say is that if you're going to offer and apply with a serious game, make sure that you've got a good way of getting that one out as well. I mean, that's a general rule. You need a way to reach your market. But serious games, because of the nature of them, make sure you've got a compelling case on how you're going to reach your audience through a partnership or otherwise. The other thing we can actually do is multi-platform projects that are that hybrid that sit in between. As long as they've got a digital component in them, they meet our criteria. I'll come back and touch that one if anyone has any questions later on it. So in the GIF, you can apply for $25,000. I will state this conclusively, applications are competitive. You need to put together a compelling proposition. The way we are running the fund, particularly this time around, is through a game design document style application process. So, and make sure that you're putting together that very compelling proposition, make sure there's enough detail in it so that we can actually make the adequate assessment. The kinds of documents that we'd look for on an average would sit about 20 pages. But I've detailed the sections for those in the criteria. Our funding commitment will be judged by an assessment process. Make sure that you book a consultation if you're not sure about that process. In fact, most developers I would expect to be booking consultations. There's a resource there. I can help you sharpen up your application, even if you are familiar with these kinds of documents and processes. There might be something you've missed. There might be something that you just need an extra hand on. There might be a statement that you've made that we need to get some sort of more second view on. We've made sure that this process is a lot more rigorous this time around and been a lot more specific about that criteria. The other thing from this time around is there's a much more detailed spreadsheet available, which goes into individual line items for your budget. Previously, from the last round, I had to look through some of the budgets were supplied, and there wasn't a lot of detail. We need to see where you're spending the money. We need to see where it's being spent. Is it being spent in Adelaide? Is it being spent outside the state? What is your, and your budgeting also is reflective upon your ability to deliver the game. I think if you see something like, again, let's have a talk about this process. Maybe you've under budgeted something, maybe you've over budgeted something, worth a chat. So if we're looking at direct eligibility criteria, have a look at the SAFC terms of trade. I don't think anyone within this group would have likely rubbed up against the borders of the criteria, but even so, just make sure that you're across that in your application within that. You must compose primarily of, okay, so I have a programmer that's based off in another state, but most of my team are in SA. Yeah, okay, no problems. If I might outsource my audio to another state, because of course there might not be someone available to do it within SA. Okay, sure. But your key creatives, the people who own your IP, must be within South Australia. It seems obvious, but you must have a team that can deliver the project. We will look at your CVs. So we will get an understanding about your previous track record. There shouldn't be any questions about your team and your abilities. All right, so now we're coming to the next point, which is commercial attachment. Commercial attachment refers to, if you have one, it is, I have a publishing agreement. I have an engagement via a platform holder. I have some way outside of my company of reaching my market. It's not 100% compulsory. However, in the current environment, honestly, I mean, unless you've got a really good track record of getting your products out to a large audience, it would be something that we would probably want to see. A commercial attachment and proof does not look like, oh, well, I know people in Apple, so I can get a feature. Please don't make statements like this. A commercial attachment and proof looks like a letter of interest from an entity. One of the best applications I reviewed for another screen org, which is outside of my usuals, actually supplied that application with 3 letters of offer from 3 different publishers when they applied, which was not only impressive and a huge vote of confidence for the project, but they were going to be fine. They had plenty of options, and given already that, they could have easily generated more options for themselves. And if you have had interactions with SAFC before, you must have good standing in regards to delivering projects. Again, a lot of this group are going to be very new to this, so I don't expect we're going to hit this one, but if a good standing means that you've delivered your project within acceptable timeframes, and of course you've gone through your acquittal process. Cool. Rolling ahead. So, a well-designed concept and product pitch, i.e. a game design document. If you don't know what one of those look like, have a look or talk throughout your contacts in the industry. They're not really easily Googleable because, of course, everyone tends to hold their IP close to their chests, but get some idea about the format of it. Of course, if you look at the guidelines, I've actually provided a bit of a shorthand to the components that you would want to see in these kinds of documentation. It's the brochure version of it. It's the version that you would be taking to a product, to a platform holder, to a publisher. If you were going to go and pitch at GDC, this is the document that you would take with you. Plus, of course, the usual screen agency stuff when we want to talk about finance and direct pathways to market, etc. Yeah, it has to be for an electronic platform. I think I've been over that. One of the biggest traps, okay, I'll let everyone into a secret. I assess a lot of projects myself for a lot of different agencies, entities in Australia and outside. The first thing that I turn to when I'm assessing a project is the go-to-market plan. And the reason being is because if they have no go-to-market plan, if you haven't defined your target audience and cannot tell me who the game is for at a national level, okay, if we're looking at a screen agency style document, because of course we have to hit an Australian audience, but at an international level as well. If you can't articulate that audience and tell me how you're going to reach them, it actually doesn't matter how good the game's going to be, because you're not going to find your audience, or it will take, you know, a lightning strike. The likelihood is dramatically reduced. So make sure you address is one of the key things that game developers don't put in this documentation, and it's actually pretty much the most important thing. So I expect to see reasonably strong propositions on this. If you haven't got a market attachment, if you're new, if you're on the journey, or if you're still at a pre-prototype stage, just define who it is you actually want to speak to. These are the audience that we're seeking. They're a mid-core audience. They're interested in these genres. They might have played these games before, and we're looking at talking to these publishers. So because target audience doesn't just mean my end user gamer. It might mean the people that I have to speak to. Like I want to talk to someone in a publisher that handles strategy games. Fantastic. We know who you're going to talk to. That's not a statement of, I want to go and talk to publishers. That's a statement of, we're going to find someone who aligns with our project. And the other thing too is, even though we've got the spreadsheet budget, have a statement about your finance in the document. If you've put up your own money, of course, so this is my money, or if you've sought finance outside, or if you've done friends and family, crowd, yeah, yes, waves, yes. We've all put up our own time and budget for it. But if you've crowdsourced money, put up some evidence of that. Just make some statements. It doesn't have to be huge. Just let us know where that's coming from as much as possible. We understand confidentiality agreements and whatnot. I see the chat buzzing a little bit. I'm going to come back to those and go through the questions after I've gone through the body of the presentation. What we won't fund. It's usually pretty obvious, but we're going to say it anyway. No, we're not going to do gambling. Okay, yeah, fair. If it feels like gambling, we're still probably not going to do it. I'd use a certain common sense test on this. I don't, even if your project feels like it, but it isn't technically, and then you've got, yeah, I've been there where people are trying to sit on the borderline. It just don't waste anyone's time. Stay away from gambling on this. Same goes for porn. I mean, we shouldn't have to say it, but of course we've got to say it. And then we look at things like commission projects. I'm the lone IP holder sitting in Adelaide, and I'm going to get a commission team to make my game. No, that's not what this fund is for. This fund is for South Australian-based professionals to elevate them. And same goes for adver games. We're not making advertising games here. That's not what this is about. This is about, there's a creativity is part of this, not selling products outside of the game. We won't touch internal training or corporate services as well. Again, there are some times where I've had applications which have been borderline in this direction through other agencies. no, just back it off from that. Something that's very specific to SAFC's fund, we won't fund purchase of rights. So if you've got a license agreement and you can show that chain of title on it, that's fine. What we're not funding is the purchase of the right to be able to make a game about the IP that you've just licensed. Non-digital games, again, we're not making board games here. I mean, I love board games, but it's just not, SAFC is a screen funding body, so they don't fund stuff outside of that. Also, board games are quite difficult to make money on. Now, interestingly, this is new to the fund in this round. What I've advised SAFC is purchase of developer kits is actually a legitimate expense for the fund. The reason being is because it's almost a marketing cost rather than a hardware cost. So if you need to buy a Nintendo Switch dev kit, it's because you want to get on the platform and market to the audience that will provide, not because you just want to test the hardware for the fun of it. Okay, this is the nuts and bolts. So you need to complete the application form. Pretty obvious. You'll need your project proposal and budget. This looks like the kind of game design doc that you would show a publisher or platform holder. I've said that a couple of times, I'm going to keep saying it. Think about what you would feel proud to hand over to a publisher or to Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, Tencent, whoever. You need to feel proud of this document. So you don't need to be an amazing graphic designer and make it all swish, but you do need to give us that information so we can make enough detail so we can make that informed decision based off that. It's going to go out to a panel of assessors, not me. They've never seen your project before, or chances are they probably haven't. So you need to sell them on it. You need to make them excited about it. And you need to make sure that they have no doubt by the end of it that you know what you're doing and you can deliver this project fine, and you've got a really good chance at finding your audience. So this first thing is, make a statement on the project. This is this kind of game, it's for this kind of audience. Be bold with that. You must include some form of scheduling. Seems obvious, but again, people tend to leave it out. Are we going to hold you to that schedule 100%? Probably not. There's a pandemic on. We are forgiving, and I mean, projects do slip. It's just there's a reasonable amount. And of course, if you have any dramas about that, talk to us. Talk to SAFC. You must give a functionality/interactivity overview or a gameplay summary. Tell us what the gameplay loop is. Tell us what the basics are. Why is it fun? You must include either wireframes or a prototype. It depends on where you are in your cycle. I mean, we will fund projects that are pre-prototype, but make sure that you've got something so we can see what it looks like. Concept art, visualizations, all that sort of stuff. I've said it before, I'm going to keep saying it. Give us an overview of your go-to-market strategy. It doesn't need to be a full marketing plan, but you need to show us some idea that you know how you're going to reach your audience. And if you have a market attachment, proof, email chains, documentation. You must apply the finance plan, we've covered that, and give us the plan for your release and what you're actually going to deliver at the end of this. If your plan for this grant is to deliver us a prototype, that's fine. That's what you state. We understand that there's obviously going to be a lot of new developers in this. So just be specific about what you're going to give us at the end of it. We need one-page CVs of all key staff. If you're doing outsourced, you know, I'm going to buy sound effects off that guy over there who's going to work on them for a couple of hours, probably don't need their CV. But if I'm going to, for obviously my key creatives, this is obviously the capability. plus any other relevant creative materials that you want to do. I've had narrative adventure games have handed me a full script. Okay, fantastic. It's great to see. We don't need to necessarily read all of it maybe, but knowing that it's there obviously helps the case because of course we've got the materials in front of us. And the big one, what are we assessing on? So once we've gone through this, we should have a fairly definitive idea about what your requirements are. So creative merit. I've broken it down, but really the broad strokes of it is how innovative is it. We understand it's a $25,000 fund, which is not the biggest amount of money in the world, but what did you do inside of that? How creative were you? If you have narrative design in there, what's the quality of it? If it's a super cool puzzle game, what's the innovative kink in it that's going to help it make it exciting and interesting for players? Don't miss out things like sound design and UX and that sort of stuff. Sound design is huge. I often see it completely not talked about within these documents, and I think that's a huge mistake. I mean, I go out and buy game soundtracks like any other people who play games, and they're not always for big games either. Now you must understand that we're going to look for your target audience. Again, I've been over this. Who are they? Can you reach them? Do you have evidence that you supply that you can reach them? We want that strong marketing plan. So I've got to understand who's going to play my game and how I'm going to reach them. And then, of course, all the business stuff, the financing, even if it's self-finance, even if you're burning your own time, I'm able to commit 100 hours to this project. Fantastic, definitive statement. We'll hold you to that. Put milestones in your release plan, in your pathway to market, in your scheduling, all of that. So how to apply? There's the URL, but of course it's on safilm.com.au/games. If you have inquiries, please book everything through Nara at SAFC. She'll be booking my consultation sessions. Like I said, they're not compulsory, but I would strongly encourage, I mean, we're providing this resource here. SAFC have been very kind to actually put this up. And of course, other screen agencies do very similar process. I'm very easy to find. I'm on the Adelaide Developers Facebook group and Discord group, and I'm a noisy person anyway. But please, if you're going to book directly, I'll push you back to Nara. Applications close midnight, May 22nd. Don't leave it until 11:59 to submit your application. I've seen this so often when you've got a developer who misses out at the last moment after a lot of work because they've left it. Give yourself time. Submit the day before, for goodness sake, because what happens if something goes wrong? What happens if your internet's terrible on that particular day? Be kind to yourselves. So that's the bulk of the presentation. I'm going to go to the questions now. How do I get to the chat from here? I can see chat. So if you'd like to start putting questions into the chat, we'll start answering them. Do we have questions? Yep, writing some now. All right, good job. I'm going to put it up so I can actually see people. Oh, there you all are. Can teams be across 2 states? In theory, yes. Are your key creators and is your IP owned within South Australia? That would be the answer. Now, co-production is great, and I suggest that we do more of it as an industry. But obviously this chunk, the chunk of the IP and the key creators must be held in South Australia for this purpose. Like I said, if you've got a couple of people outside of the state, that's fine. Waiting for the next one. What are your thoughts on developers having Kickstarters or other crowdfunding sources to fund their projects alongside? Yes, more of that. Crowdfunding is market validation. If you put up and you've got a successful crowdfunding project, people are demonstrating quite literally they want to buy your project that's not even finished yet. It's great. Yes, absolutely. Does the deliverable have to be a complete game, or can it be an add-on such as for flight simulators? You'd have to demonstrate that it was a complete chunk of work. I'll take it back. I don't see any particular issues, like for instance, if it was a DLC or, excuse me, or something like that. But it would have to be a complete chunk of work. And the other thing too, 25K, I mean, we're not expecting miracles for that money, right? But I mean, and of course, like the deliverable can be a prototype or something. Is a functioning demo prototype something I would look at in a consultation? Yes, get it to me before we do the actual consultation. Preferably, if you want to book a consultation, get your materials to me so I can review them before actually sitting down. Otherwise, I'm going to waste time on the consultation going through your product and application. In the marketing area on the forums, do positive comments from very large YouTubers and footage of them covering parts of the game count towards this potential reach of the game? Yes, but I would want to see a demonstrated, to be safe, you'd want to show that you're going to get, if you've got like a big YouTuber, you know, Dan TDM wants to show something on your game, have some sort of commitment back that he's going to talk about it later. Otherwise, it's still, it's validation, but it's not pathway to market. Do you have to have demonstrated experience in the game space as other successful storytelling count? Show us what you got. I mean, you've delivered projects, evidently, if that's the space that you're coming from. I would be, but tell us why it's transferable directly into a game, into a game space. And re-GDG, only looking at key gameplay mechanics or core system loop rather than full detail with a pitch doc will suffice. Not your 10-page pitch deck. Within reason. I don't need to know every single magic item that's on your game. But a core, talking about the core mechanics, talking about the most important parts. I mean, it's probably just a reasonable test. And again, talk to me. I'm being very open and honest about talking to us first and letting us know about your document pre-submission. So if I think you need more detail, I'll pretty much say so. Or maybe sometimes, like, I mean, I've seen a 64-page submission before. No assessor has time to read that. So you want to be fairly succinct. What are my thoughts about free-to-play games? Would they be at a disadvantage? No. Great, go ahead. Show us a monetization method. That's probably the hardest thing with free-to-play. The other thing that's hard about free-to-play right now, of course, is actually, again, like everything, what's your marketing attachment look like? Free-to-play is hard because you're having to have it. I mean, if you've got a small studio, you need a whole mechanism to make the things that people are actually going to buy. If you have a very small studio, that's a challenge. So demonstrate how you're going to deal with that. Does the bulk of the money need to be used in SA? Can international voice actors be used as an example? I would suggest to you that we would look more favorably if the bulk of the money would be used in SA. But again, that's something, it's not a hard rule. The bulk of your creatives certainly do need to be there. If you have a high profile voice actor, that can help you get attention, but it's not a definitive. If you are a new startup with no previous release games, would it be best to have a game well past the prototype stage to demonstrate your ability to actually create the game? Probably. I mean, it certainly gives you more backup and evidence. I think that if you can demonstrate capability, that's the thing, because you got to remember your assessor is going to look at your ability to actually just deliver the game. If you're a startup with no previous experience, I mean, you've got to have something there. It would be a very difficult application to have a startup with no experience with a pre-prototype game. It would make it for a very different, compelling, to be a difficult, compelling proposition. If you've not really done a massive amount of publishing before, but you've actually made small projects and everything and are sitting on itch right now, that's great. Project delivery. It doesn't have to have been commercially successful. Just not released any games. We'd want to see something. I mean, just do something that's going to help your case. Are you able to say any examples of what the funding was used for previously? Funding, so I'll talk about this in very general terms from programs that I've seen across the country. Funding's used for artists, programming, voice actors, sound design. Some people use it for marketing. Some people use it to help them get to a convention. It's really variable. It's what you need, as long as you're mainly spending it on your SA-based developers. If you're using it to help get a new artist on board your program, that is near a perfect case for this grant. Do we have any other questions coming through? I say as I pause for water. I think, oh, hang on, here we go. Gamification of something that is educational in nature versus something that is simply educational. Does the game have to have a clear advantage? It's got to be a game, right? This is not a fun for gamified applications. It's got to be a game. It not like, I think part of it as well, I mean, remember your assessor wants to find the fun in this. They want to be excited about your project. How many people applied for the last round of funding and how many people got accepted? I believe 5 or 6 projects got accepted. I'm not sure if I can actually tell you how many people applied last time. I think that information is confidential. Hey Nara, what are you able to elaborate on that? Not sure. Come back on that one. Where can I meet the marketplace? You can go 6 projects, week successes, there you go. Where can I meet the marketplace? You can meet publishers on Twitter. You can meet publishers and funding. Right now we're in Corona, so of course this is hard. Melbourne International Games Week, GDC, your friends, your networks, your commercial attachments can come from anywhere. One of the best applications I've read, they actually had, their market attachment was actually, they were an installation-based company. They were making games with a funky AR installation. And their market attachment was actually Westfield. They were staging it in shopping centers. It doesn't have to be that traditional publisher relationship. What sort of teams can apply? It can be a sole trader, it can be a company, it can be a partnership. No real preference on that. It just has to be a capability thing. Are solo developers likely to be accepted? I've seen solo developers accepted across programs across the country. I don't see any particular issue with that. And I believe some were from last round as well. Collaborative groups of artists as opposed to a studio with a prior track record. Be very careful. Have a robust legal agreement that covers you for that sort of scenario before you start. Because the moment the game makes money, friends can stop being friends. If you're going to be a collective, and I'm not saying no, for peace of mind, SAFC would probably want to see intent for a fairly strong legal agreement to actually, or a robust legal agreement to govern that relationship. It would almost certainly be required for sign off. Can funds be used for promotional purposes, i.e. to help raise? Yes, you can, absolutely. tell us how. I wouldn't go chucking the majority of the funds into marketing, but certainly we would expect that. For the people who are successful in getting funding, is there any meetup, reviews, interviews, and presentations necessary to attend? I don't believe anything is organized at this stage. It's usually pretty good to come and do some publicity afterwards. And of course, I mean, there would be media opportunities that usually come out of these. Is game visual with graphics, or can it be a strategy type game that doesn't do visual as such but engages? If it's a game on a digital platform, it's available, you're fine. If it's a text-based adventure game, in theory, you could apply. Is there an issue of if we apply now but cannot get started with the project now due to pandemic? We're really, screen agencies are very flexible, forgiving people. And sitting as we are now in the middle of all of this, we understand that you're going to have some challenges that we wouldn't normally even have to deal with. So I think the main thing is to maintain that line of communication. As long as I'm working on this program, I'll be kicking around on the communities and everything. Like I say, I'm a very easy person to find. But even post then, if my contract finishes up and we move on, Nara's there. There's a team of very capable people that will there support you. Cool. David Tucker has asked if I have a gamification system and a huge gaming component, would they? We would need to see the project first. I would strongly recommend before submitting that. If it's a gamification system, again, is it a game or not? If it's a gamified business app, no. If it has to be a game, it has to meet that definition. It has to be that. It has to be there for entertainment in some description, even if it has a serious message to it. And it has to have that content and that gaming mechanic in it. Are there recommended groups, Discords, etc., that people can join? Yes. Look for the Adelaide Developers group on Facebook. Look for the Adelaide Game Developers Discord. Search on Facebook for Professional Game Developers Australia. Fantastic group with the high end of the Australian industry on that group. Even Game Dev Twitter, Australian Game Dev Twitter is really super friendly. Obviously it's more open, so anyone can chip in, but by the same token, everyone's been through what you're going through. There's a lot of people who are very generous with their time and experience. Dan Thorsland, thanks for answering that question. I'm glad that you're across that. I'd strongly recommend jumping into all those groups, because the other thing too is, particularly if you're a solo developer, making a game is a really lonely process. The people who are there and your peers are there to help you out. The Australian game dev industry is so massively collaborative. I think we all jump on, and even across state lines, absolutely. Just looking at the time. Do we have questions that we want? Do you have anything else that you'd like to? And thanks to Nara for helping out on the next channel while we're on. No?
Sorry. No, that's it. My details are up on the screen with my email and phone number. If anybody has any follow-up questions that we haven't had the chance to answer tonight, we'd be more than happy to follow that up for you at a later date.
I'll be kicking around all the Discord channels and everything probably don't message me too much over the long weekend. But on the other hand, I'm usually pretty free to give it to give advice on whatnot. I try to steer clear of giving anyone specific creative advice unless you've got something that would be particularly hampering you on your journey. If we don't have anything else, then I think we might park it, and I will speak to you all soon. Please make sure to, if you're going to book a session, to do that through Nara's email. And thank you very much for joining us on this evening session, and have a good Easter long weekend, wherever it may not take you. Thanks all. Really good to see this response.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Vee.